Hi, everyone. I'm actually joining just a tad early. And if you are deciding to join live, this is the first time that I'm doing the live streaming, doing this on YouTube. So you'll have to cut me some slack if I have some mishaps along the way. So if you're joining today, the topic that I'm going to be talking about is what if you are trying to do this e-learning process right now and you are not one-to-one. That happens to be the case partially in my district. I'll go out and I'll give a little bit of background on me. So I'm actually the District Technology Integration Specialist at Franklin Township Schools, and we're located on the southeast side of Indianapolis, Indiana. So with that, a little bit of background again about myself. I've been in this position, for about 6 years now. And prior to that, I was in the point of being able to be a teacher in the classroom. I've taught 3rd grade, 4th grade, and so on. But having technology in the classroom and being able to integrate it with the curriculum has always been a true passion of mine. So that's a little bit of background about myself. I've done many presentations. I have presented at ISTE in Indiana. We have some conferences here. Some of them are the Indiana Connected Educators Conference, the Indiana Google Summit, and so on. So some of you that might be hopping on to see this live or even later, it could be that you guys have seen me at a presentation before. Part of the reason why that I'm offering this solution is because I know that I've had several people reach out to me and say, hey, could you do PD for us? And I just haven't had a means to be able to do that, to be able to help people globally. So now that I'm able to do this streaming method, I can try to help out as many people as possible. So I'm going to jump right in and get right into it. If you're joining and you want to, you can add on the chat. You can add something in there on the comments if you want, letting me know who you are, kind of where you're from, if you're from Indiana or if not. If you want to give me a little bit of background on what it is that you teach, if you're outside of my district and you want to give me a little synopsis of devices and so on, I'll kind of be taking a look at the comments to try to help people out if they have questions. All right, so getting started, as I started to say, our district is kind of a hybrid. So in my district, grades 6 through 12 are actually using Chromebooks, or they are bringing their own device to the building. In grades K through 5, we have carts of Chromebooks at our district, but they do not go home with the students. So this was actually turned out to be a great scenario for me. About 2 years ago now, we had a case where we had an ice storm, and in Indiana, we have different snowstorms. And so I was challenged with the task of coming up with what could e-learning look like, but we would not have enough devices to be able to send them home at the elementary level. So kind of coming across, how do you handle that situation? So I thought about it. I thought about it a lot. And so the process that I'm going to give you today is kind of basically the foundation of how I set it up in our district. And my hope is that some of the methods that I'm doing can help out you if possible. So with that being said, what I started out by doing first was we all know that we want to survey our families. So that's what we did. We surveyed our families to find out what their Wi-Fi access was. And surprisingly, at first we thought, oh, we're probably not going to be able to pull this off because I bet we have a high percentage that don't have it, because we do have some title schools in our district. However, what we were surprised to find out was that the people that had access to Wi-Fi was a lot higher than what we had anticipated. And the reason for that is because a lot of people may have Wi-Fi access. It's just that it's through a smartphone. It's not perfect. It's not ideal, but it does give them a means. So that let me know whenever we were trying to set up our program, just some different things that I had to think about. So phase 2 of that was I told all of our elementary teachers to send out a Google form, or we also did it paper pencil because we wanted to make sure that we got access for everyone. We sent it out and we asked parents, if we were to do e-learning, what type of device do you have at home? And in that, I actually have pictures of devices, and also, like I said, we had it digitally where they could tap on it and give us their response, or they could respond paper pencil and send that back. If you're in a district and you're living this now, and let's say your district has told you that you're going to be, that you are rolling out e-learning currently, and you're not one-to-one with devices, knowing exactly what devices that each one of your families are using is really key. In addition to that, I would have teachers that would contact me and say, oh, well, who do I give this data to? And I'm like, the data is not for me. The data is for you as the classroom teacher. Because when we get to a point where we're going to be sending out e-learning and sending out things, I wanted it to be that a teacher would already know exactly what it was that each parent had. So I said, keep that for your reference. So with that, included in this YouTube, under the description, I actually have a link to all of the resources that I've sent out with our district. I will probably go ahead and share my screen for a moment. And when I do that, I just want to make sure, because again, this is my first rodeo here with me doing that. So with this, you guys should be able to see a screen that says COVID-19 free resources. And I'm going to take a look at my daughter. Can they see it? Is it showing like a Bitmoji of me? Nope, it's still showing me. So with that, let me make sure I'm getting on what I need here. There we go. All right. I'm going to go ahead. See, this is why I said this is the first time I'm doing this. So I know I'm going to have some kinks with it. So I'm going to share it again. She just told me that it did work. I'm going to share my screen again. So on here it says COVID-free resources. And so one of the documents with the COVID-free resources that I'm going to be talking about, because I'm basically going to be going through each one of these. When you scroll down, there's going to be one that looks like this, and it says prior. And I already have that up on a different tab. And so I'm going to go over to that one in just a moment. When you tap on one of these images, you're going to see a blue link down below, and then you're going to be able to tap on it for it to load. So when this loads on here, this is where you're actually going to see the communication that I have that I send out with our teachers and with our families. So with the teachers, they get this information. It's saying like prior to us getting started with e-learning, here's the link to the digital Google form and the paper version about devices. And then there's a Google Doc that we made for the teachers to keep that record. Addition to that, we then also came up with district-wide items that we wanted all of our teachers to do. Now, that kind of leads me to platform. So one of the biggest recommendations that I can give you is the fact that you want to make sure that you are having a common platform. I help out people all of the time that are outside of my district, and one of the first questions that I ask them is, what platform are you on? When I say platform, I mean, is your district using Google Classroom? Are you using an LMS like Canvas? Schoology, there's all kinds of them. Seesaw, some people are even using Seesaw. But I remember a conversation that I had with one school district, and their comment was, oh, well, we let our teachers choose. And I was like, ugh, that worries me, because you're going to hear me say this several times. I design with the community in mind. So when I'm thinking about our community in Franklin Township, I want to make sure that it's easy for a family that has multiple children in our district for them to locate the information that they need as quickly as possible. So if I told every teacher that they could choose whatever they wanted, one teacher, might choose Seesaw, the next one may choose Canvas if that's what the district has, and then another one may choose Google Classroom. I often talk to people about, the role that I'm in when I'm at the district level. I'm thinking outside of your classroom, and I'm thinking outside of a school building. I'm thinking about a broader perspective. But one key bit of advice that I can give is that your district needs to have that common platform. I'm not saying that it needs to be the same platform K through 12. It could be, but it doesn't have to be. In my own school district, we are actually Google Classroom, kindergarten through 5th grade. And then when they transition into that one-to-one environment in 6 through 12, they actually do operate on Canvas. But I think as long as you're having that clear communication with your community so that they know that, then that's the piece that they need. And rather than it being kind of haphazard, if that makes sense. So once we knew what our platforms were going to be, we decided to set up expectations that we wanted teachers to be able to do, again, thinking about how to streamline all of this with our community, especially for elementary, again, if we're going to be on multiple devices. So we knew that elementary was going to use Google Classroom, but we determined what were the key things that all teachers needed to have that would look the same. So if I'm a parent and I'm going into Google Classroom, it shouldn't be that if I'm a parent and inside of that elementary building, each teacher has their Google Classroom set up different ways. Now, we weren't totally strict. We just had some basic guidelines that we came up with. And if you were on that sample document, I have it typed out on there. So one of the things that we had on there was that every teacher had to have a Google Classroom. And so by the end of the first week of school, we told them, you must have your Google Classroom. And we had them send the code to the principals so that way, if there was an emergency or something, then everybody has access to it. So that's kind of phase one. The next thing that we determined was finding the classwork. So if they needed to find their e-learning, we wanted to make it easy because parents are not living in Google Classroom every day. So we needed to make the process very easy for them. So what we decided to do was we had it set up so that there was an arrow in the header that would point to the word classwork. If you're familiar with Google Classroom, there's the stream and then there's classwork. Well, when Google Classroom first started, everybody was using the stream and there was no word that said classwork. Well, now that got added, that changed things for everybody. So we wanted to make sure that a parent knew where to get it. So we said, well, we're going to tell everybody that you need to have a header that has an arrow that's pointing to classwork. And so that was the second expectation. The third expectation, this was the final one that was in there. The third expectation was you needed to create a topic that said e-learning, and that topic has to stay at the top of your Google Classroom. So that way, I try to think in the concept of the least amount of clicks. So if I'm a parent and I need to get to the information for my kindergartner or for a second grader, I want it to be what's the least amount of clicks, what path can I take to get to what it is that I need. So that way it was, you get into Google Classroom, so you log in. Once you get in, then you're going to see that arrow. You tap on classwork, boom, it says e-learning, and it's right there. So that way it's obvious what it is that your child is going to do for that day. So that really helped a lot once we came up with that commonality to have that in there. Now for our secondary that are using Canvas, We did the same idea with Canvas. We told them on your homepage, you're going to have a word that says e-learning, and it has to be very visible on your homepage. And when the student or the parent taps on the word e-learning, it takes you directly to the assignments that you want them to do for e-learning. Again, both options and wanting people to understand how that works. Okay. So then then what I had to decide for the elementary, again, since we don't all share the same devices, what am I going to have us use to create the lessons? And I had to decide, I know the common practice is every teacher for themselves. And, hey, you all need to create content and everybody's going to make it, you're on your own for that. And in my head, I feel like I think constantly about the proactive. Well, if we did this, these could be the potential problems that we could have. And I wanted to try to stay ahead of that as much as possible. So again, thinking of the fact that we are not one-to-one in elementary, I started to think to myself, is it better for each teacher to create their own lesson, or is it better for us to create lessons that were common in grades K through 5? And then that way, when people are asking questions, it's much easier to manage. And if I'm a parent at home, then it's much easier because everything is looking very similar. And so they don't feel like that they're having to learn a million different things, if that makes sense. And so that was the route that we decided to go. The first year that we started e-learning, I actually have a e-learning committee that consists of teachers in our district. We have a few teachers per grade level. And we came in and we discussed what a template would look like. And this is what I can't say enough. Templates are key. Being able to use a template in this type of environment. Even if you're watching this today and you're like, okay, well, this doesn't help me in my district because we're not all doing the same. I do have to make my own. The biggest way that I can help you is use our templates, use what we've already created, because I'm all about working smarter, not harder. And I know how hard it is right now in this situation for everybody to try to stay on top of everything. And so what we did in this pandemic, we decided that there were certain teachers that I would reach out to, and we did Zoom calls with, and we had to start to rethink what it would look like for each grade level. So with that, what we decided to do was we started with math. Math was the easiest one to get started with. We use everyday math in my school district. And so we were trying to wrap our head around, okay, what is that going to look like? And if you're familiar with HyperDocs at all, they are like, the queen of templates. I had been doing HyperDocs quite a bit. And so my thought was take the HyperDoc process and do something like that for our e-learning. And so in a moment, I'm going to pull up our math template that we came up with, and I'll walk you through that one first and kind of our thought process with it. So let me go ahead on here, and I'm going to share my screen again on here. So I have my math e-learning template. And again, you guys are welcome to use any of these templates. The one thing that I am going to tell you is that it's going to show for you view access, like view only. And you don't need to ask me for access. What you need to do is just go up to the word file, and then you would tap make a copy, and then it'll let you make a copy of the entire presentation. So any of the things that I'm showing you today, that's the process that you would do. So here's our math template and what we came up with. We decided with explore, apply, extend. So for instance, on the explore, we knew with everyday math that there would be like a certain lesson that the students would be doing. And so I told the teachers, I said, well, go out to YouTube and see if there's a video that you could find that was on that topic, and that could be under the Explore. And then this was where we had to make a decision too. Rather than every single teacher recording their own video math lesson, we decided to create a district-wide math video lesson. So I reached out to some teachers and I said, hey, I heard that you're really good when you're teaching your math lessons. Would you be willing to do this? And they were like, oh, yes, absolutely. And so some of the lessons were right before we were getting ready to shut down. So that's why you'll see the inside of classrooms, and others were not. Now, I want to preface this that I actually did a staff meeting this morning with one of my elementary schools, and I made it very clear to them, even though there's a video in here, if you're doing a chat with your students, if it's a live chat, or let's say that you take a look at the district math video and you're like, that's awesome, but can I make my own? The answer is yes. I want them to customize it. But again, the reason why that I wanted to have something there was that when we're sending out these district slides, I wanted a parent that may have limited access, like maybe they can't do a Zoom chat or a Google Hangout with you. I wanted them to have the bare basics of every lesson that they would need. So that's why we at least have this video that is here. The next thing that you're going to notice on the apply, again, since we're doing everyday math, you're going to notice that we have links to the workbook pages. Because again, it's all about less clicks. I didn't want somebody to say, well, I can't remember my login, I can't get to the page. So we tried to make it as easy as possible for our community. So if it says a link to a page, then when they tap that, it's going to be an actual link to the page. Now for my template, I've removed the links, obviously, for copyright. On the Extend, Everyday Math already has built-in games that the students can do on their website. But we've also had people saying, what are additional resources that I could do? And that's what you can use that for. Now, after talking with families after our first week, they asked if we could add a second slide onto here so that people would have a spot to record their answers for the math boxes and other items, if that makes sense. Now, let me take that off. All right, so with that, that's kind of our feel with math. Now, what you're going to notice is that even though we're all using the same common e-learning lessons, they all look like that they're in different pockets. And this is why on the website, I actually call myself like the gatekeeper. I didn't know how else to say it. We have multiple slide decks that are being sent to me. So I have many different teams that are working on this. For instance, our literacy coaches worked with me because we're not using our reading series now. We're doing full-fledged guided reading. And we had to wrap our head around what in the world would that look like when we're trying to do this remotely. And so I'll pull that up in a minute. When we're doing that, it's each individual group. So like if it was 5th grade math, I had some 5th grade teachers that were taking care of that slide deck, and then they were sending it to me. I have that for each grade level in math. As I said, our literacy coaches are helping me with the reading portion. Related arts turned out amazing. In just a little bit, I'll show you what our completed decks look like if you haven't seen them. I was able to do a Zoom chat with each of our related arts people, and just like one person out of those teams. And then I said, hey, this is what we need to do. I showed them what we were doing for math, what we were doing for other topics. And I said, could we do the same concept, that explore, apply, extend? Could we use the same template and do that for related arts? And they were like, yeah, we could totally do that. So I had them then break out, and they did their own meetings with like all the art people, all the music people, all the library, and so on. They did all of that, and they each made their own slide decks and sent them to me. Now, when it gets time to get ready to send out e-learning for our families, I basically sit down on my computer and I pull up all of the different slide decks and I'm piecemealing. Here comes this slide out of this deck. Oh, wait, I need the reading slide. I need the music slide. I need the PE slide, and so on. And I've had people tell me, well, that just makes it too easy for teachers, like that teachers aren't doing enough of the work. And here's what I always tell people. It is completely different if a school district is one-to-one. If our elementary was completely one-to-one, then yes, teachers would have enough training at that point, and they would know enough about packaging materials because they would be using it on a daily basis because they're one-to-one, that wouldn't be a problem. If you're in a district that's not one-to-one, that is, honestly, it's not fair. If you're asking a teacher to compile all of those lessons and have all of that ready, it's not easy on the teacher, and it's really hard on your community. Some of the things that I can tell you for sure in talking to our parents, because ours was going to be a gradual release. We thought, well, for the first year, we'll make grouped lessons and then we'll gradually release it to the teachers. And what the parents responded was amazing. They all started saying to us, this is awesome, and you need to keep it this way. And the first time that we actually used it full-fledged was when we had a really bad freezing temperatures, and it lasted like 3 days. It was either 3 or 4 days consecutively. And here's what we noticed, because many families still had to go into work. Other people in their subdivision were offering to watch other kids. And so when we started to get pictures of students working on their e-learning, we noticed there were like 7, 8, 9 kids that were all together doing the e-learning. And the reason for that was because they were trying to help each other out in that scenario. So if a parent needed to go to work. So what the parents started to tell us was, oh my gosh, you made it so much easier, because if I had a kid that lives down the street and they were in 3rd grade, and let's say I'm a parent and I've got 3 kids, I've got a kindergartner, a 2nd grader, and a 4th grader. Oh, and I've got this random 5th grader. The template all looked the same. The content wasn't the same, but the template looked the same, so it was easier. I even heard parents even talking about the fact that watching kids that were from different schools, because you kept that consistency in your district, then again, you're making it easier on your community because you can have a platform where you publish those. So that was big. I'm going to go back into sharing my screen again. And this time I'm going to talk about reading and what we've decided to do with reading. So let me get to that really quick here. All right. So here is what we were thinking about for guided reading. And by no means is this perfect. So if you decide to use this, again, remember, go to File, make a copy, and then you can customize as you need it. I even have a breakdown on the second slide where I recorded some audio so that way you guys can see our thought process, but I'll kind of walk you through it right now since everyone's on this live. So I sat down with some of our literacy coaches and I said, I just want to be able to wrap my head around this, because we have to make this manageable for a community member to be able to do this at home. What would be the best way to tackle this? So we started off by doing a read aloud. And so we have that category where it says read aloud. Now, I know there's a lot of concern online right now about what books can you read out loud and what ones are not. And what I wanted you to know is the fact that if you use anything from the website Storyline Online, you can use that. Those are 100% fine because they got permission from the publishers. So the first thing I told our literacy coaches was, okay, well, we're going to use as many of the stories off of Storyline Online as we can until we can't use any more, which we still have plenty to use. So I have the video here. I added just an image of the cover of the book. And then in Jan Richardson's The Next Step Forward in Guided Reading, she has modules, which have, basically different mini lessons. So then we aligned a mini lesson with the book. So on here, you're going to see the BME, which is the beginning, middle, end. So one thing that we have added to this, and I'll show you one of our completed decks in a moment, but one of the things that we've added since, we also have this anchor chart, but now we also have a video that our families see going over the mini lesson, because I don't want a parent to feel like that they need to know how to do all of this. We wanted to help them. On this next slide, on this next portion right here where it says practice, the student can then type in the beginning, the middle, and the end. Now, so far, everything that I've been showing you has been to the point where you're seeing things that are, that are great on certain types of devices. And you're probably thinking, well, this is all on Google Slides. How is she handling people that are on different devices? So what I discovered, Google Slides works fine if you're on a Chromebook, a laptop, a PC, a desktop, iPad, any of those. It works fine on those. The people that are in our district, it seemed to be that if you had a lower income, then the type of device that we found that was being used often was a tablet. And when I say tablet, I mean a Samsung tablet or a Kindle Fire tablet. So then I started to realize, we've really got to make sure that our lessons are optimized for that. And so I didn't have one of those tablets. So people always laugh when I tell this story. I actually went to Best Buy because I thought, where is a place I could go where they would have all of the different types of devices so I could test out our e-learning. So I went into a Best Buy and I asked them if I could do it. And they were like, yeah, sure, go ahead. So I literally just lined up the different devices and I logged into my Google account. Don't worry, I logged out before I left. But I pulled up what our Google slide decks look like on every device. And so what I discovered was on a tablet, Google Slides appears, but it appeared weird. Like, in other words, not everything transfers correctly. You don't see all of the links and images. So then I thought to myself, okay, well, what if we save the Google Slides template as a PDF? If we save it as a PDF, then what does it look like? And that was the magic ticket. So once I saved it as a PDF, it didn't mess with any of the settings. It looked exactly right. If there was anything that was linked, a video or whatever, then they just tapped on the picture and then it launched the video and so on. So that was a really pretty big game changer. And so I guess when you're serving your families, that is definitely something that you want to pay attention to. What percentage is using a tablet of some kind? So, and keeping in mind, like, I know we're using Google Slides. If you were going to use Google Docs or something else, whatever you do, it's going to have to be saved in a PDF format so that the family can access it easier. Okay. Then I had to start to think about smartphone users. In the beginning, we would just tell families, hey, if you're a smartphone user, these lessons are not really intended to be done on a smartphone. You're just going to need to pick up the paper pencil packet. That was in the beginning stages. When I knew that we were going to be doing this for several weeks, I thought that's not good enough. Like, we've got parents that have a phone at home. That is their lifeline. That's their way of being able to communicate. And we can make it so that they can get to the lessons if they're on a smartphone. So I'm going to share my screen again. And one of the things that I wanted to show you, and this will actually show you the how we've put together our slide decks. Let me do it again here. I'm going to get to my Chrome tab here. All right. So what I did was, I'll go out to the home page first. I went to Google Sites. Google Sites was like my saving grace for this. It's very, very easy to make a website in Google Sites. You can basically just drag and drop, throw things in. So what I did was our IT department helped me with putting this link to this Google site on our district page. And we're telling people that if they're on a smartphone, then you can use this website to help you locate your e-learning for the week. So this week we're in April 13th through the 17th. So I'll just pull that up. So first off, our counselors are adding in like a weekly video. And then what you're going to notice is that we have each one of the grade levels, the slide decks are embedded within. Now, one of the cool things about Google Sites is that it's optimized for a tablet, it's optimized for a smartphone, and it's optimized for a laptop or a desktop. So the fact that it doesn't matter what device that you're on, you can still access the material, then you're fine. So I know what somebody might be thinking, and they might be going, well, if a parent can get to this, why do I even need to go to Google Classroom? We still want the teachers to send out the e-learning to Google Classroom. But what if you run into a case where a parent just can't get it figured out? They're like, oh, I'm struggling with this. I can't find the lesson. I didn't want them to be frustrated. So I always tell people, worst case scenario, send them to this link so that way they can get to their materials. So I'm going to kind of walk you through. So this is kindergarten. And I cannot tell you how much this slide right here has made a huge difference. Because as I said, operating our e-learning lessons look different depending upon the device that you're on. So when we added this slide, I recorded a video explaining to parents, if you're on this type of device, then this is the video that you want to watch, and so on. So we added that in there. We decided to have them, right now we're doing e-learning Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. So we've broken that up, and we have the options in there. Now you're going to see our reading that's in here. So we've got the read aloud, we've got that mini lesson, and we've got the practice. Now you'll start to notice as I go through some of this that you're going to see QR codes. That was another thought that came to my mind. So if someone is a smartphone user and they need to be able to access materials, this is where a QR code is going to come in extremely handy. And I'll get back to that in a minute to show you why. So here's an example of the kindergarten with math and a lovely Don O'Friel, who's one of our kindergarten teachers, teaching the lesson that week. Then they've got some additional practice with math. We tried to make it very clear to our families what day that things were due. Then we also have writing, because we wanted to make sure that we had some semblance of writing going on during this crisis. So the thought was, don't reinvent having to find a million different read alouds. What if we tied in, if that's going to be what we use for the week, then why not go ahead and use that same book for the writing prompt? So that's why you see that listed here. So that's working out really well for us. The child actually has a link if they want to just write it out on paper, or if the parent wants to type it into the slide, they can do that as well. Now you're going to start to see the related arts. So this is some examples. So again, I just want you to notice how we're continuing that template. So that way it's not something different on each slide that the students are doing. So that way we have that in there. At the end, we have this assignment checklist. Now, one of the biggest differences between having a tablet and doing this actually on Google Slides, when a student is in Google Slides, they can actually move these check marks and they can type on here. If you are a tablet user, the one thing that we've had to tell them is you can view all of the activity, you just can't type on the screen. So we just tell those families, just write it out on paper, pencil, and that's perfectly fine. When we use these for snow days, then the students just bring in the paper pencil the next time that we have school. During this pandemic, we're just doing the best that we can. So we're just telling families to write it out. Now, I wanted you to see this where I have the paper pencil. This was a request that our parents gave us. People that need the paper pencil packet they are doing it, that we have pickups every Monday. So when we have the pickup, it's usually like from 3 to 6, around that range. And so we were having families that weren't able to go and pick it up. And then they started asking us, hey, do you have the paper pencil version of the e-learning? And so what I did for them was I compiled each one, and you're going to notice this for every single grade. So we've got, again, less clicks. I've got everything on here for all parents to see. If they missed the pickup that week, then all they need to do is tap on this, and it's going to launch the paper pencil version. Now, this is real important to note. I wanted to make the paper pencil version mirror what they were doing in Google Slides as much as possible. So you're going to notice how you see a lot of similarity that is in here as they keep scrolling down. Now, this is where the QR code is going to be important, because now that I've made this paper pencil, the student can scan that QR code and listen to it if they only have a smartphone at home. When we scroll down farther, we even have the story typed out, because again, if that's all that the family has at home to help them out. So I just made it so that this was going to print in a portrait mode, and I put 2 Google Slides on a page, and we're copying these back to back to try to conserve paper as much as possible. When we get to the related arts, you notice all of the QR codes that are listed in here. But I want to get past the checklist, because this is where you're going to see we've got the math boxes and also the writing paper if the families need that. And then again, a link to the story. So what was important for our families was being able to have a one-stop shop for them to be able to find all of that information, if that makes sense. Now, to compile all of the paper pencil, the best tool that I can tell you to use is called PDF Mergy. It's been a game changer for me. I was able to take all of these different downloaded PDFs, and PDF Mergy says, which ones do you want to merge? And I just pick them, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it puts it all into one file. So literally when our central office is actually going in to print out the paper pencil packets, they are actually doing that through the website that I've made, and they just tap on that link and then they start printing that out. You also might notice that it may seem like that we're not doing as much work. Well, in Indiana, our head of our head of Indiana instruction, our state superintendent, she was talking a lot about how this is really called continuous learning instead of e-learning. And I love the fact that they're calling it that. You know, in Indiana, we use e-learning a lot for inclement weather days. But this is so different from that. This is continuous learning, and we are wanting to be very mindful of the amount of work that we're giving families to do. A few weeks ago, I did a Twitter chat, and I was trying to have different scenarios on there to make sure that people knew what it is. You know, like, hey, if you're putting on all of this work, maybe not everybody has a device at home. And how do you manage multiple people in the home trying to do this e-learning when they don't have enough devices? So that was really, kind of my piece with that. The other piece about having the paper pencil mirror what's going on in the Google Slides, then you don't feel like that you're going to have one group that is going to do more than another. This is another way that we can keep it consistent across that grade band. I will talk about SPED and EL just briefly and how I handle that. I told my teachers, I said, if you notice in Google Classroom that it's SPED or EL that are not completing the e-learning, if you notice that something's not right, then I say, that's the time when you need to let the SPED teacher or the EL teacher know, so that way they can also be contacting the family. A couple of tools that we talk about using when we are communicating with families. For EL families, if your school district is not using talking points, that's a great one. And talking points just announced that it was like completely free, that your district can use it. So definitely look into that. Another option, especially with SPED or EL, or if you need to reach out to a parent, is using Google Voice. Now, when I say using Google Voice, I don't know why, but it's set up this way right now. If you tried to do Google Voice through your EDU domain, it would actually charge your school district, which you would think that would be free, but it's not. So if you wanted to try Google Voice, then that would have to be done with a personal Gmail. If you wanted to keep something inside of the EDU domain, Amanda Sandoval, who's out in California, she's another great person to follow on Twitter. She's amazing. She posted this last week that she figured out kind of a hack that in Google Classroom, if she makes an empty Google Classroom that just says calling home, I can lose my voice, calling home, then she can actually integrate Google Meet. And that way she's not using her own phone number to be able to reach out to families. So I thought that was a great idea. I know that I've got roughly about 15 minutes left of the call with our live stream here. I wanted to take a moment to go over a few of the other sample items that I have that are in the free COVID resources. Again, feel free to share. Let anyone know. And it's not that you're doing anything wrong. Obviously, don't sell it. That's the one stipulation that I'm trying to tell people. But I want you to be able to help people out as much as possible. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen so that way you guys can see over here a few of the other resources. So on here, I'd already talked about the guided reading and the math. If you are one-to-one and you want a full-blown template of what it could look like for each subject area, then you're going to want to tap on this template, which I know has been pretty popular. And it is the same template that we're using. If you want that one's a great one. If you want a link directly to the Google site, that's what this link is for right here. I'm going to keep on scrolling down. I have a related arts template, but if you want just art lessons, PE lessons, music, and so on, they have been so generous. They have 4 or 5 weeks already done, and you can use any of it to help you out. We also have the writing template that's up, and remember, it's mimicking what we were doing with guided reading. So I kind of feel like those two go together. If you wanted to see how we're rolling it out, I'll go back to this document in just a moment. But all of these other items are PD that I've done with our teachers. Like if you need help with Google Classroom, how can you use it? Maybe you're using Zoom in Google Classroom. If your district is Canvas, I also have some resources down there to help you as well. So the last document that I want to pull up is the sample. And I'm going to go ahead and open that up again just to make sure I don't lose the connection. So again, on here with this sample document, this document actually lives inside of Google Drive. And in Google Drive, I put it in the shared drives. So everyone in my district has access to the one. Right now, the file says April coronavirus e-learning lessons. And inside of that, each grade level has one of these documents. So this is my go-to for telling teachers what they need to do. So I tell them when they go into Google Classroom, if they know that the student is using, again, this is where they need to have the knowledge base of knowing what their families are using at home. But in here, it's going to tell them, this is the document that you're going to add. So then they tap on this, and I've already forced a copy. So then the teachers add that link for them. I have a PDF version for tablet users, and they send out that to tablet users. Anybody that they know that's using a smartphone or they don't have any device, they can either add in Google Classroom or they can email out or use any type of communication with families and send that out as a link to that district website for them to get what they know. And down here at the bottom, I always have a link to a YouTube video where I'm reminding teachers how to add all of this to Google Classroom. So again, I'm just trying to streamline all of this as much as what I can, if that makes sense. So I'm going to start taking a look at your comments. So if you guys have questions, I'm starting to look over there. And I noticed that, I'm going to take a look here. Mrs. Chandler, I'm so bummed that we're having trouble with Google Slides. Our students rented iPads and we sent a fractions activity. So many parents said that they couldn't move anything. I know that is frustrated. That's very frustrating. So with that, that is why we had to tell the parents that if you're doing an iPad, that they had to be basically sent the PDF. If they download the Google Slides app for the iPad, it doesn't actually work exactly the same. It does a lot of where the parent's having to toggle in and out. It can be done. I don't want you to think that it can't, but I think probably part of the issue that you're dealing with there is that you're also dealing with the tech ability of the families at their homes. So that's why we started to tell people if they were using an iPad to do it with a PDF version and just record their answers on paper pencil. I know if you're using Seesaw is a good platform where you could add Google Slides and then they can easily move things over. But I don't know like the whole story of what all you're doing in your district. She had another question. Yeah, she said, I even recorded a video showing how to get out of the presentation mode. Yeah, and so I hope that helps you. I would say at this point, if you've got parents that are frustrated, just tell them to do the paper pencil. Because again, my focus is that I don't want families to be upset. I'm trying to do anything I can to make it easier for them. If that helps. Thanks for other folks for having some comments in here and so on. And I wish I would have asked where some of you guys are from because some folks are on there that I'm not sure where you're from. Okay, so now she said, what about parents who cannot print the PDF? Do you suggest sending the survey? Definitely do the survey. If they can't do the PDF, if they can't print it, when I say that it's a PDF, I mean like if they're getting it on the iPad, I don't mean for them to print it out. I just mean for them to write the answers on paper. They're still seeing it on the digital screen, but they're just writing out their answers on paper pencil. But definitely send out a survey to find out. Oh, and you're in Indy. Okay. Sorry about that. All right, and you're using Google Classroom, cool. So hopefully that sheet where I showed you like how we're sending things out, hopefully that helps you so that you know kind of the route that you can take. I think if you haven't done that survey, that would be the first thing I would go back and do. Go back and survey your family so that you have a clear guide of knowing what it is that your families have. Let's see here. When teachers post the slides to their classroom, do they click on make a copy for each student? Yes, they do. So what I do whenever I send it out is I force a copy to the teachers. And then when the teacher's adding it to Google Classroom, yes, it does the same thing. They have to do it where it makes a copy. Now, the one where it's different that I will say is the PDF version. You're not making a copy of the PDF. You're just giving them a link to the PDF. So that's why on my instructions, it says copy of the link or something like that. So I just tell my teachers, copy this link and paste it in Google Classroom so that helps. And Mrs. Chandler, I see that you're teaching 3rd grade at St. Luke. And keep in mind, like, as I said, you guys are welcome to use any of the lessons that we already have done. My teachers all know this, that I'm like an overshare. And it's not because I'm trying to like brag that we're doing it the best way. It's more about the fact that I'm trying to help out anybody that I can. I've had so many people reach out to me and tell me that, they don't have someone in my position. They're lost. They don't know what to do. And to get started doing this, you need all the help that you can get. So having a template and having something to go from is big. So steal, just don't sell is basically what I'm saying. If anybody else has any questions, that is fine. I will have a recording of this session. Once it's done, it should record to my drive, and then I'm going to add it to my YouTube channel. So basically anybody who didn't get access to this, you guys can watch it at any time. Let's see here. So now she said, how much time are you telling your teachers to provide live instruction? Okay, so, and this is probably very much dependent upon who leads your district or your school. We are not requiring our elementary, since we're not one-to-one, we're not requiring them to do live sessions with them. But I want to preface that with, our teachers they're still doing live sessions anyway. It's that it's not mandated at the elementary level because we're not one-to-one with devices. So what I tell my teachers though too, like if they wanted to do a weekly check-in with their class, I would not do, like if you're live with students, I wouldn't be covering the content then, because are you truly getting 100% of your students at that time? I bet not. So unless you're recording that session and then having it available for students to watch later, that's a lot of pressure on the student that doesn't have a device and can't keep up with the class. So the best means for being able to stay on top of that is you doing a screencast of your lesson, telling the students to watch that during the week. And then when you do a Zoom or a Google Meet, you're answering questions. So if someone says, hey, I didn't understand this about reading and so on. That's the part that I would make sure of. Our secondary that is one-to-one, they're doing Zoom calls on Thursdays and Fridays with each class period. But again, it's more Q&A. It's like you already had your work and now you have this. Uploading the lessons with you. I'm trying to understand what your question was there. I'm not uploading the lessons. It's all the teachers that are uploading it. Our guideline is that our teachers have to have them added to Google Classroom by 3 o'clock on Monday, if that makes sense. So hopefully that made sense for you. And I appreciate everybody kind of bearing with me. I know this was my first time going live and you guys were great. I am doing Monday PDs every Monday for 3 hours. I always do PD for my district. And this is kind of where this idea came from. I had people reaching out to me to say, would you be able to do any kind of PD that anybody could join? And so if I do this as a live stream, my teachers on Monday afternoons can join in on the PD, but now anybody else that wants to join it as well can. Oh, so you put on there, how much of that screencasting lessons are your teachers uploading? So earlier I had said, we have certain people designated in our district that volunteered to do the screencasting lessons. Those get sent to me in the slide decks. And then those slide decks are in the district-wide set. If a teacher wants to go ahead and make their own screencast and send that out as additional material for their class, then they totally can do that as well. So hopefully that helps. So everybody's adding all of their videos inside of their slide decks. It's not like I'm getting a bunch of different screencasts that are sent to me. Everything is sent through there. And I know your comment, like you said something about, you could just use a brain pop video. There's a lot of research out there that if a student is seeing their teacher live doing the screencast of the lesson, that is actually very beneficial. My advice to you, if you are doing it, if you're one, like who else is teaching third grade in your team, and I would do the divide and conquer method. I always suggest the divide and conquer. So rather than you trying to do all of those screencasts, split it up between your team. And then that way it takes some of that pressure off of you, if that helps. Okay. Wow. So I went pretty strong here for straight up for an hour. So if you guys have further questions, you can either reach out to me on Twitter at Nadine Gilkison. On Instagram, my handle is at NE Gilkison. And you can reach out to me that way. If you want to email me, it's just nadine.gilkison@ftcsc.org. And I am signing off. Hope you enjoy the resources. And if you want to come back on Monday, you're welcome. All right. Bye.